Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Goud Crowd. I am your host, Goud. The show is named after me. Okay, we have a lot to talk about today because there's a lot of different things going on. I actually feel like there's too much news on a single day. But why don't we start with the Utah legislature just approved their new congressional map. And just as background, this was required by a district court judge named, I think it's Judge Gibson. So I thought we'll start with, okay. Well, I could try the other mic, Mr. Producer, if we want. I just don't know what happened to it. Maybe let me try this. Hold on. Here we're just gonna try something. Okay, let's see if this works. Just bear with me. Is that any better, Mr. Producer? Let's see what he says. Or did I go silent? Okay, we're back. So we'll start with Dan McKay, as I guess he voted no on the maps, and he made some comments. I think these are useful to listen to. So here, let's play this.
I've been thinking long and hard about this process and have gone back and reviewed judicial orders, judicial decisions, and reviewed and weighed the different balances that we're trying to reach here. And I'm just going to say that I think that this process that the courts have asked us to come up with is a farce. And it's a joke. And the court's giving us 30 days to respond to it when they had 8-9 months from when decisions were, from the last oral arguments were had. And it took the judge 8-9 months to come up with a decision. And in that decision and in the order, with flaws in the order, not only were there flaws in the analysis, flaws in the lack of separation, respect to the separation of powers, lack of, proofreading, the spelling errors and the date errors that were in the order after 8-9 months, all this work. And what the courts show in this example, in my opinion, is a lack of respect for the people and a lack of respect for their process. Because that's truly is.
So I want to point out a couple of things here. Mr. Producer, can you hear me as I'm talking? Because I'm not showing up on the screen. I'm confused. Oh, there we go. Okay, thanks. I guess we fixed that. So just a couple of things here on what Dan said. Number one is he is correct that this judge sat on motions for summary judgment for months. Okay, so I thought it was I thought it was 7 months, but he's saying 8 to 9 months. That is completely unacceptable. And really, when that judge issued her decision, instead of complying with it as the legislature has done today, they should have pulled her in and initiated impeachment proceedings. She is an activist judge. She's not actually, the orders she has issued are not constitutional. And the fact that she sat on it for that many months is completely unacceptable. And I suspect that if you bring her into an impeachment proceeding, that you conduct discovery to get her communications, what you will find out is that she did that on purpose. The delay was on purpose. And it was done to jam the legislature up, meaning to make it so that they would not have time to appeal her decision and would instead have to do what they did here. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the types of Republican legislators who will actually assert their own legislative power. Because the way that the constitutional balance actually works is that we have 3 co-equal branches of government. That is the executive, which in this case is Governor Cox, your legislative, which is the legislature, and then the courts. Now, the system that we've actually, it requires the different branches to actually push back against each other. And the judiciary is supposed to be the weakest branch because it is not elected. It is these unelected, in Utah's case, they're not lifetime appointments, right? We do get to go and decide to whether we want to retain them. And unfortunately in the state, and I think some of this is just lack of voter education on the issue, we tend to retain all the judges. And it's horrible because the courts have been filled with activists by a Republican governor, multiple Republican governors in a row, and a supermajority Republican Senate. So we just keep on retaining them when we could get them off the courts. But in this case, I actually think what happened here is egregious, that she should have been pulled in and impeachment proceedings should have been initiated immediately. Okay, let's let him keep talking. So he's one who's been pointing this out. Again, her delay was on purpose. That was not an accident. Everybody needs to understand that she's not stupid. Even though she had met multiple typos in her orders, even though it took her 8 months, even her decision was actually wrong. She didn't understand that she could not order the legislature to do what she ordered them to do, and she had to amend her order. So totally clownish judging on her part. But the 8 months wasn't because she was working on the opinion. It was done on purpose to jam the legislature.
The legislative process. And what I'd say in a lot of ways, as I look back at the way this argument has been carried out, I'd say that one thing that has been lost in this process is the fact that we have a representative form of government. The people elect the representatives to be here in the House and in the Senate. And in that process of electing representatives, that's the way the framers of the Utah Constitution intended for their government to be altered and reformed. The idea that an alteration or reformation of the government comes by court order or comes by initiative or referendum in a way that the voice of the people cannot touch those referendums or those initiatives in that process was never intended by the framer, and that argument is completely ignored throughout the court's process. So as I look at what the court has done, they took 8-9 months to make a decision. They issued an order that was blatantly problematic, and then further disrespected the will of the people and the process by asking the legislature to ignore the standards that they thought were so sacrosanct, and then turning around and asking us and basically compelling the legislature that if we didn't do it, the court was going to do it for us, which I don't see that anywhere in the Constitution. So I just look at the process that the courts have created through this process, and I would say it's a joke, it's a farce, and in a lot of ways it is disrespecting to the voice of the people that elected these members of the legislature. And for that reason, Mr. President, surprisingly, I have no idea about the partisan nature or the leaning nature of any of the maps. I've purposely kept myself out of it and have not known anything for the same reasons that have been talked about, but I'm going to vote no. And the reason I'm going to vote no is because I think the process that we have come up with at really with a gun to our head from the judiciary is inappropriate. It's a violation of the separation of powers, and I hope at the end of the day that what will reign supreme is respect from the courts for the three branches of government instead of disrespect that we've been handed through this process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. So again, I know I'm getting some comments from people who think, I actually think he's right on this issue, because the judge also just can't, like the process isn't even something that's provided in that initiative that everybody is citing as the thing that was allegedly violated. So if you violated it and now you have to comply with it, why would you just make up a whole new way of doing things that you didn't have before? It doesn't make any sense, right? Okay, now, I think what's kind of interesting is the opponents have already now filed a motion in the district court saying that this violates her order. Like, I mean, like they were already ready for this. And so what you're going to see, my prediction on this is it's either that the judge is going, and I'm going to do kind of a political thing here, right? It's either that the judge is going to affirm this map, or I think the kind of what could happen is she might actually pick the map that the Democrats submitted that would give them 2 guaranteed seats. And that I actually think will tell you, because honestly, this entire process has been set up because what they're alleging is that if the Democrats don't get a guaranteed seat, that we have gerrymandered maps. I mean, that's the entire argument. That's been the argument from the beginning. And the maps actually weren't gerrymandered to begin with. If you look at, there's a Stanford initiative that goes around and evaluates maps to determine whether they're gerrymandered or not. When they use their little algorithm, Utah's maps were actually found to be good maps, meaning they had a good mix of urban and rural. You know, I mean, we're mostly like a suburban state, so a good mix of that. They covered the similar areas. Like there was a bunch of things I looked at, and we met their standards for not being gerrymandered. When that happened, though, they brought in someone to look at it, and then that person said they're gerrymandered because you'll get 4 Republicans. But, well, 4 quote unquote Republicans. I don't know that we really have 4 Republicans in our congressional delegation. But anyway, so I just think that was kind of interesting. Like this was gamed because what the Democrats do in the states that they control is they gerrymander beyond belief. You like go look at Illinois' maps. You have never seen you don't even know what gerrymandering looks like until you look at Illinois' maps. It's a joke. They do it in every state they control. That's how the Democrats operate. It's the Republicans who are stupid. We always are giving up seats because we're like, oh, well, we want to be fair, blah, blah, blah. And that's great and all, except the other side's not fair. So you don't play that way. That's stupid. Plus, remember, they totally gamed the census when Biden took office. I think I saw someone say there should be 250 Republican seats. I think a lot more seats were supposed to move from blue to red states, but the Biden administration played a bunch of games with the census numbers. And so places like New York, Illinois, Michigan, California have seats that actually should have gone to red states or even swing states, where so that means that those people don't actually have the representation that they were originally entitled to. Now, here's what this map looks like. I like this one because Jensen actually did a good job of. He did this based on the congressional the congressional results in 2024. So this is what the new map looks like, and this is a little bit different because if you go based on the Trump numbers, these will be closer. I think one of the maps is R+6 with Trump, and one is like R+2. But when you look at the congressional results, then they turn to R+13, R+12. So, and it'll be kind of interesting. I will be honest with you. I don't know. I think that Riverton is a CD2 under this map, but I'm not sure. And it'll be interesting to see who ends up running. The Democrats are gunning to take both these seats. So I'm interested to see who steps up to run. I suspect, I'll tell you, like one of the people they keep saying are going to run, I'll show you this. It's Ben McAdams. So I want to play this because I'm sorry. I just think this is the funniest thing. And it's very Utah that people, but let me start with this. I'll just tell you. So I've seen multiple posts where people think that the two new seats, that Ben McAdams will run for one, and then Evan McMuffin will run for the other one, and then we'll end up with apparently these people are really in love with those two, right? And my question is, I mean, if they win those 2 seats, how many gays would be in our congressional delegation? If you want to speculate, you're welcome to put comments and tell me. Like, do you think it would be 50%? Do you think it'd be 75%? Do you think it'd be 100%? I don't know. I think it's a riddle. But I want to play you this. I have a friend who actually ran against Ben McAdams for mayor at one point. He's gay. And one time he was talking to me and he told me something like, oh, hey, this Ben McAdams. I was running against Ben McAdams and somebody asked me like, oh, what is it like to be the only gay person running in the race or something? And this guy said, "Oh, I didn't know." And he was running against Ben McAdams. He said, "Oh, I thought there were 2 gay guys running." And I was like, when he said this to me, I was like, oh, okay, I mean, whatever. I mean, you think everybody's gay. But then I saw this video and I heard him talk and I was like, oh my God. So here, I'll play this for you.
He tried to divert law enforcement's attention from his wrongdoing and made bogus allegations against me. That matter was thoroughly investigated and I was cleared completely.
Miller pleaded guilty to
Like, I can't, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know how you listen to that. I know gay guys that sound less gay than that. Okay. I mean, maybe he's straight in Utah, maybe he's straight. I don't know. But I heard that and I actually texted my friend. I was like, oh my God, I understand what you were saying now. This totally makes sense to me. So anyway, so that's what apparently, but I'll say this. I actually don't think, I think these people who think it's going to be Ben McAdams and Evan McMuffin are actually naive to think that they will not get primary challenges from the Democrats. For example, I would expect Suzanne Harrison to step in and run for one of those seats. Now, she is horrible. Like, she is a nasty individual. She's got kind of this reputation for being a moderate, but when it comes to the issues that matter, she's actually not moderate at all. She's a lefty. And so, for example, she totally supports men being allowed to use women's bathrooms and locker rooms in Utah. When I went and met with her, and I went with Candace Duncan, she's the one that helped me expose that men were being allowed into women's locker rooms in Salt Lake County's rec centers. We went and met with Suzanne Harrison and her aide, and she was so nasty. And what it showed me is that she puts on this front when she's campaigning, and nobody asks her any tough questions. It's all this like, hey, everybody. She's like, I'm a doctor, and I just like helping people, and that's why I'm running for office. It's just that type of very surface level type, which works on a lot of Utah's voters because they're like, oh my God, I hear this. She's a doctor. She's going to be so good as a legislator. But then when you actually delve into the policy positions she has, she's a left-wing radical. Like, she goes to the Equality Utah Allies Gala. She has a top rating from Equality Utah. So she is A+, but Equality Utah loves her because she supports all of their radical agenda. And so understand, she's going to run, I think, for CD3. That's my prediction. And so if, let's say, Ben McAdams and her run for that seat, I don't know that he wins that race because he's ostensibly a heterosexual white male, and she is a heterosexual white female. And so in the battle of victimhood on the Democrat side, I think she would win that, and she would probably win that race. So I wouldn't assume that you're going to have McAdams and McMuffin. Mr. Producer says doctors often make bad businessmen and even worse politicians. Tell me about it. But in this case, it's that she's a nasty individual. That's the thing. Like, when we had that meeting with her, I was shocked at how nasty she was. That is not how, and it is not because I wouldn't normally expect that even from a Democrat. I've met with plenty of Democrats who were super pleasant. Even if we don't agree on a lot of issues, there were issues where we could agree. Like, for example, I went and met with Angela Romero, and she was phenomenal. And, like, we don't agree on much, but I was there to talk about an issue where we did agree, and we had a phenomenal conversation. So you can have those types of things. With Suzanne Harrison, I don't think it's possible. So that's probably what you'll get there. I would think also in CD2, you should get some of the Democrats as well. I don't know who it would be, but something to think about. Oh, I'm sure that Kale Weston will run. So, then you gotta still ask the question. Like, if you end up with Kale Weston, Ben McAdams, Evan McMuffin, how many gays do we end up in our congressional delegation? And let me just say, like, I don't think there's a problem with gay people obviously running for office and being in office, But the question is, if they are not out, like, again, that's the question, right? If you think someone's gay and they're not out, they can be blackmailed. That is always the case. So you see that all the time. These people like Lindsey Graham, I think he's gay, but he's not, he's closeted. Well, I guess he's kind of closeted. I don't know if he's 100% closeted or not, but he's clearly somewhat closeted. He's not open about it. And so someone like that is easily blackmailable because they're trying to hide it. So that's what you don't want. You don't want people that are hiding secrets like that, because then people can take advantage of it. Okay, so, oh, there was one other thing on this. I guess that Brady Brammer, Lindsay Aerts reported this, that Brady Brammer, so she said, just in, the Senate has passed Map C with 2 Republicans, Heidi Balderi and Dan McKay, and Senator Thatcher of the Forward Party voting no over the House. Senator Brammer threatens that if the court picks its own map, which is a real possibility, by the way, or the LG Henderson, or the lieutenant governor certifies elections under it, so that would be the new map, it would be a malfeasance in office if they use a map that has not been approved by the legislature. In other words, he's threatening that they could be impeached. Yeah, right. I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. Not going to happen. If you want to have that type of action, you got to get better legislators in office. And that is not going to happen. Okay. So we have a few comments on this. Let's see what we got here. Melanie says, in my opinion, Dan McKay is Cox's lapdog. I don't know. I mean, I get it. Sometimes Dan McKay is like a mixed bag. He does some good things and he does some not so good things. This is a good thing. I like that when the Sonny Washington issue popped up. So Sonny Washington is a board member of Equality Utah who targeted me. And then Governor Cox re-nominated her to continue to sit on the Salt Lake County Community College's Board of Trustees. Dan McKay actually helped kill her nomination. So I appreciate stuff like that. But I totally get he's a mixed bag. Tracy, and I'm not trying to defend him. I'm just saying, mixed bag. Tracy Alverson, we do not have a representative form of government. We have an elitist-backed and picked government. The legislature does not listen to the people. No, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. Melanie says, right, Tracy, and Evan will be a real problem for Utah. Yeah, I know. McMuffin, I think it would be a real problem. Okay, now there was another piece of news that came out last week, and that is that the LDS Church has taken a stance against transgenderism before the Supreme Court. So I went and I looked. I think I mentioned this last week. I did go and look at the brief, and the brief is in. There is a move to try to make gender identity a suspect class under the Equal Protection Clause. And so the LDS Church joined with, I think it's like the Catholic Church, and I don't know if there's like a Jewish equivalent of the Catholic Church and LDS Church. But I thought there was something in there about a Jewish entity. They came together and they filed a brief opposing this. So I thought this was actually useful because they do not oppose having gender identity in the Utah Anti-Discrimination Act and then also read into Title VII. What they are saying is that it should not be considered a suspect class under the Equal Protection Clause, which is a distinct argument. Now, I agree with them. I think they're right. And they're saying the reason, though, you don't want it to be a suspect class. Oh, that's hilarious. There's someone named Carrie just wrote, I'm a homophobe. I am gay. I can't be a homophobe. I literally am a gay man. Okay. Anyway, so what this says, though, is that if you elevate the gender identity or transgender status into a suspect class under the Equal Protection Clause, it would actually destroy religious freedom under the First Amendment. So, and the issue here is that because constitutional rights prevail over statutes, elevating transgender status would weaken the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and create uncertainty for religious organizations in employment, public accommodation, public funding, and parental rights. And that's key for those of you guys out there, you know, this parental rights issue is a big one. And a lot of times the trans agenda is being used to actually being used to step into your relationship with your children and step in between it and limit the types of treatments you can give your children, limit how you can help your children. It's a very evil agenda. And so you really can't have transgenderism be a suspect class under the Equal Protection Clause. Okay. Let's see. So here's the key point, what they say, and my point about the legislation. They say grave consequences for religious organizations and people of faith are not only unwarranted, but unnecessary. Tailored legislation can safeguard basic rights for transgender people without putting an unprecedented gloss on the 14th Amendment. That's my point. This isn't saying, they're not saying that they don't support having gender identity in the Utah Anti-Discrimination Act. And like I said, read into by the Supreme Court Title VII. I last week was talking about how we actually need to remove gender identity from the Utah Anti-Discrimination Act. And we need our congressional delegation to remove or make it clear that gender identity is not covered under Title VII. And that way, because right now we are prevented from discriminate against transgender people when they apply to be teachers and in other positions where they will interface with children. And it is my view that if you are trans, or as we say, a tranny, you should not be able to work with children under any circumstances. That should be banned. And the only way to do that is to remove gender identity from the Utah Anti-Discrimination Act. And then also we need our congressional delegation to work on making it so it's no longer protected under Title VII. Okay. But and you know, like one thing would be useful when we're doing this in Utah though, is for legislators to actually go and contact the church, so the LDS church in this case, and see if we can get the church to at least be neutral on the issue. But it would be even better if they actually support it, because then we'll have a great opportunity we'll have a fantastic opportunity to actually get this out of UADA and be like a leader on this issue. Okay, then they say, let's see here. They talk about religious employment. So basically, religious employers are allowed to discriminate against people if you don't ascribe to their views. So for example, if you are, let's say you're gay, you have a husband, let's say you're a gay man, you have a husband, and you want to go work for the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church could say, no, we can't have you work here because you're actually not living the way that you're like a biblical world. You're not living in a biblical way because you're married to a man. And so we can't have you work with our children. And they should be able to do that. Because again, all of their employees in a religious organization are there to proselytize to their faith. And so you can't have people that are there undermining the basic tenets of the faith that they practice. And they make a point here saying when the Supreme Court read into Title VII that it protects people based on sexual orientation, like you can't discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender identity, they actually said that they said what would happen is that Title VII would be subject to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act when it comes to these issues of discriminating against individuals for being gay or transgender. But then what ended up happening is that the EEOC actually disputed that would be the case. The EEOC has disputed that RFRA offers a defense against Title VII suits by LGBT employees. So they said the EEOC took the view that under Title VII, employers must treat homosexual marriage as the same as heterosexual marriage, and bathroom policy should be dictated by an employee's asserted gender identity as distinguished from his or her biological sex. So interpreted, Title VII conflicted with both employers' sincerely held religious beliefs about marriage, sexuality, and gender. Now, the Fifth Circuit disagreed, and they concluded that the EEOC had no evidence rebutting the employer's contention that complying with the commission's reading of Title VII would substantially burden their religious exercises. The court held that the EEOC's generalized interest in prohibiting all forms of sex discrimination in every potential case did not satisfy RFRA. So the Fifth Circuit had to overturn the EEOC, but if you understand the EEOC, it tends to be very leftist. And so this is a risk when a Democrat comes into office, is you're going to have an EEOC that begins to go out and impinge on the freedom of religion. And so if we want to get ahead of that, which is what we should be doing, we need to make it clear that Title VII doesn't cover gender identity. Now, the final thing here is they talk about, they talk about the how this would impact parental rights. So they say parental rights present another area with troubling implications for faith communities. Religious organizations, including Amici, sorry, I always forget how to say that, often teach the importance of marriage and family with a strong emphasis on the unique contributions of each gender as a central religious doctrine. And the LDS Church does this, right? I mean, you have the family proclamation. They've made very clear that sex is eternal. Like, you are born in a sex and it does not change. So again, I have no issue with this. I think this is right. Some states obstruct that goal by requiring candidates for adoption and foster care to certify that they will affirm and support a child's future expression of transgender status, if any. The Ninth Circuit recently addressed a free exercise challenge to such an Oregon regulation. It requires would-be foster parents or adoptive parents to show they will respect, accept, and support the sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression of a child, or I don't know what happened to the rest of that. Sorry. Anyway, I might have cut that off kind of weird. But anyway, like, that's so, like, this is an issue. This is an issue we're trying to deal with in Utah as well. I think it was, I don't remember, I think it was not this session, but the session before it, we got it at least in divorces. And I talked about this before. In a case of divorce, I was able to get Representative Grecius to propose and pass a bill that makes it so that whether a parent will affirm a child's chosen gender identity is a neutral factor, meaning the courts cannot consider it either way. Now, when I testified about it, I actually said, what we actually wanted was, we want courts to prefer the parent who will affirm a child's birth sex. I don't want to hear about gender identity. It's not a real thing. It is a mental illness, and we should help children get comfortable in their birth sex. We weren't able to get there in 2024. That's just where our legislature was. I think maybe they've moved a little bit to the right on this issue. And so maybe we could go back now and get them to come in and say, look, no, we're not doing that. If a child has gender dysphoria and the parents are getting divorced, the child needs to go with the parent who will affirm the child's birth sex. So then the other one is another area, and this is what the LDS Church and the other religious institutions write. Another area of concern occurs when state and local laws and policies authorize public schools to conceal a child's transgender activities from her parents. Such policies burden the religious exercise of parents whose faith teaches that sex and gender are indistinguishable. Only last term, this court reaffirmed that the practice of educating one's children in one's religious beliefs, like all religious acts and practices, receives a generous measure of protection from our Constitution. The right of parents to guide the religious upbringing of their children follows those children into the public school classroom. So this is critical. You do not want gender identity added as a suspect class under the Equal Protection Clause. And the other thing is, I don't know why you would add it. It's not an innate quality. So race, innate, right? I cannot change my race. I would argue sexual orientation, I don't think it's like something you can get rid of. As someone who's gay, I don't think it's, it is what it is, but I don't think I should be discriminated based on that. I'm not sure it should be a suspect class, though, under the Equal Protection Clause, to be honest with you, because these same issues actually pop if if sexual orientation becomes a suspect class, because the problem is it could really impinge on religious freedom. And I want to think a little bit more about that, but I do think that's an important thing, is like we want religious freedom. We want everyone to be able to be free. I don't need to be going into I don't think most gays even want this, to be able to go to a religious institution and force them to do stuff. For me, it's more like I just want to be able to live my life and not have people interfere with it, and be able to get a job and be able to work and things like that. So those are different things. But gender identity is not something that's permanent. It's a mental illness, and some people succumb to it, and then they get the surgeries, they get all the hormones, they do all these things to permanently. Yeah, exactly. So someone just said it's the cake situation all over again. 100%. Yeah, it is. Like going and forcing someone to bake a cake. That's weird. Like every time I hear that, but that's all done on purpose, right? Activists go and they target businesses to get them to bake these cakes, and then when they won't do it, so that they can sue them and be able to make a point. Every single one of those cases where someone's doing that is exactly that. Like a gay couple, those are activists. They're not normal gay couples, because a normal gay couple, if they go to a baker and the baker says, hey, I don't want to, it's against my religious convictions to bake you that cake, a normal gay couple will be like, okay, we'll go somewhere else. And they'll do it for maybe multiple reasons. One is maybe they respect your rights to have your religious views. Maybe they think, hey, I don't want to give my business to somebody that doesn't support my lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of times these are actually very fraught with emotion. If you read the case about the florist, and I think this florist was in Washington State, when she wouldn't make the bouquet for the gay marriage, it was actually an emotional thing because they were friends of hers. So it wasn't even something where she was like, I hate you, I think you're going to burn in hell. It was actually like, look, I love you guys, but it's against my religious beliefs, gay marriage. So I can't do this for you. But like they turn out they were activists. At least one of them was an activist. So that's all this. It's like activists taking advantage of that. We don't want this. We want a society that I think our founders actually kind of envisioned, which was the right way to do this, is to let people have their sincerely held religious beliefs and to be able to live their lives accordingly. I don't see a problem with that. Anyway, this thing is actually this is helpful to what we're trying to get done in this next session. And I think I talked about it last time, but Representative Lee actually is proposing a bill to remove gender identity from the Utah Anti-Discrimination Act. I would urge everybody who's listening to help him get that passed, right? So once it's out, you're going to have to email. If you can, you should go to the hearing. You should testify in favor of it. I will say, I think the hearing will be full on like entertainment because you got all the freaks out. Equality Utah is really good at gathering all their, bizarrely, people that are transgender seem to have a lot of time to go and protest and stuff. So it'll be like full of all the freaks, and it's pretty entertaining. They'll have pink hair. They'll have a lot of them have those like nose rings in the middle of the septum one that's in the middle. It's like a cow nose thing, all that kind of stuff. And so you can go to that hearing, testify in favor of it, explain why we need to remove gender identity as a protected class. Contact our federal delegation. I know most of them don't really seem to do anything that's helpful to us, but maybe this is something they could work on. You know, now that they have competitive maps, maybe they'll work on stuff. Okay. I think we're going to have a call in a few minutes. Let me set you guys up for this. We have, also, I'm going to talk about Dan McKay again, but he released a video. This is kind of interesting. So you guys all know I live in Riverton and we have a mayor's race going on. I think, I'll be honest with you, I'm not hearing a ton about the race right now. I did have a neighbor come over the other day and invite me to his house for a meet and greet with one of the candidates. And it's happening right now. It's like, I couldn't do it because of the show. Otherwise I would have gone. But I think we have an open mayor's race. So that's what's key. And, you know, the Riverton is probably one of the most conservative cities in Salt Lake County. And so we're replacing Trent Staggs. And so this is like a really interesting race. And you can see I think it's actually a hot race. I don't know what the polling looks like, but I know in the primary that happened, it was leaning more towards a lot more. I think it was like 60 something percent to 30 something percent in favor of Tish Baroka versus Tanya McKay. But here's one of the big issues that's been kind of floating around is that in the McKay's house, both husband and wife are elected officials, and that seems to be an issue that keeps popping up. And so here's the video. Let's take a listen.
Hi, I'm State Senator Dan McKay, and I represent Riverton in the Utah legislature. It's our favorite time of year.
I'll just say one thing. This is a very clear video. Like he looks good.
Right? Municipal election season, the signs are everywhere. And obviously, I support my wife, Tawny McKay, for Riverton mayor.
Hope so.
I've heard concerns from some people about supporting my wife's campaign for Riverton mayor because it may feel weird to have two elected officials in one house. Now for us, we've been doing it for 8 years, so we're used to it. We really don't vote on the same issues or even go to the same meetings, but our partnership has served Riverton well with record transportation funding in the south end of the valley. But I would hate to be the reason someone doesn't vote for the best candidate for mayor in Riverton. So I'm going to take that issue off the table. If Tawny wins for mayor, I won't run for re-election in 2026. For 26 years, she's been my biggest cheerleader. And even though I've loved serving you in the legislature, it's my turn to support her. Please join me in my endorsement of Tawny McKay for Riverton mayor. Thank you. Hi. I'm
Hold on. Okay. So you can see, right? That's kind of that's interesting. Melanie Yates says, yay. I've actually seen a lot of people. There was a funny meme out there like, vote for Tawny McKay, or like get rid of, like, keep Dan McKay, get rid of Dan McKay or something. It was really kind of a funny little meme that someone did. And so, so Mr. Producer says, I saw this vid. 2 elected officials should not be in one home. He's doing the right thing. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm interested to see how this plays out, but let's bring Tracy on. She's a fellow Riverton resident, and so she's going to, maybe she has some thoughts on this. Hold on, Okay, hey Tracy, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Did you get a chance to watch Dan McKay's video?
Yeah, I got it immediately. Somebody linked it to me when it was posted.
Okay. Okay, so I will be honest with you. I don't know what kind of impact this is having on the race. So I'm interested to, I think people would be interested to hear. Have you heard anything? What are people talking about? Is the video having an impact?
All I've heard is like people making fun of it because, he wasn't going to run anyways, but to me, it's like, I don't think he was going to run anyways.
Okay, that's news.
Yeah, but to me, it's like another bribe. Like, hey, if you vote for her and she wins, I won't run again. Like, it's like horse trading. It is so odd to me. And I don't know. I think people in the area have a distaste for what has been passed and stuff and how he's acted and treated us here.
Interesting. Okay, hold on. Mr. Producer asked if you could move your camera down a little bit. I think he wants us to match up a little better. Yeah. You see how you're like, I'm higher than you. That's it. Okay. Is that good, Mr. Producer? Okay. So you're talking about, I think McKay. Well, there's a couple. I get what you're saying. So like, you're talking about McKay's record, right?
And treatment of the citizens. I mean, she's been on a council for 2 terms, I believe, and she's actually even like conducted them when Mayor Staggs was gone. And there's no like constitutional feeling when they are in charge of a meeting. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Mike Brown meeting where Mike Brown got drug out of a meeting up on the Hill from.
Well, hold on. We should just make sure that we're careful who we're talking about. If we're talking about Tani McKay or Dan McKay, right? I don't want people to get mixed up.
So this is Dan McKay, and he's the one that caused Mike Brown to get handcuffed and drug out for like a We the People. Well, recently this past year when Tani was in charge of one of our city meetings, the people would stand up and say their point of view, and then the crowd would clap, and she'd go, no clapping, and it's like this is America. It's not like they were like being rambunctious and like throwing chairs. They were clapping, and it was like, I'm in charge. Like, I don't want that type of mayor or representative, because that's not a representative form of government to me.
Well, just to be fair, though, I do think when I've been in meetings, regardless of where it's been, they have generally said like no clapping. They try to keep
those rules apply to the council. Government was created for us, and the rules apply to them, not to us. And so if you're gonna be violent and like throw a chair, yeah, you'll probably get removed. But no, they're not the ones that are supposed to clap. Just like they're not the ones that are supposed to wear the stickers in those committee meetings, because it shows impartiality and you're not voting the way you're supposed to. So it's
okay.
I don't know. I don't want that type of representative. So I don't think his video is going to do anything. I think they burned too many bridges here.
Interesting. Okay. Do you think, I mean, well, what is your sense of the race?
I think
I don't think there's any polling out of this.
No,
I haven't seen any polling.
I haven't seen any polling, but I think that the primary was a pretty good poll. And most people will go back and look at that to see what the primary was, even if they didn't vote. They will go back and look. And there's no way somebody's going to go, wait a minute, she got over 60% against the other two. That's gonna shoot her up even further, in my opinion.
Okay. Do you think has there been any news about a debate? I feel like we had talked about this earlier, and I've heard people talk that they would like to see a debate. Have you heard any news about a debate being scheduled between the two candidates?
Hold on one second. I gotta shut my door. One second. Hold on.
Maybe while we wait, should I replay the Dan McKay video? Although I will say, I actually think it looks good in that video. I do want to say that, Tracy. I do think Dan actually looks good in that video.
Oh,
it's a very
if the government's paying for your video and stuff, heck yeah, it's gonna look nice. I mean,
I think that just might be like a phone. Look at, here, I'll just show you. Like, I just thought it's very clear. It's like very clear.
I think it's done by, they have their own company that does these videos for them.
Really?
Yeah, we pay a ton of money. I just wrote it in a complaint. The house particularly has like 160,000 or something that they pay for these promotional videos to do good.
Okay. I just thought it's so clear. Like, it's a very clear camera lens. I don't know that I like his tie. No offense, Dan. I think a darker tie would have been a little better here, but it's all good. Okay. Sorry.
As your question to the
debates. We're going to see a debate, or is it too contentious?
I don't think it's contentious between the candidates. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you've seen online, but Tani has been contentious to all of the council and gone after them. There's been some riffraff there. I don't think between the candidates there is any contention, but I would like to have a debate.
Well, we don't have that much time. The election's November 4th. We're going to get our ballots on, I think, Tuesday, if I'm correct, on October 14th. So
I wish they would have had a debate. I do know there's this struggle of Tani's trying to say she's more Republican than Tish, and I don't think so.
Well, I mean, that would be a great issue to bring up during a debate to see, because I know that when I interviewed the two of them, that did kind of come up a little bit, but I thought it was more about party registration versus record. But because I'd like to hear more about that. What is the thinking? It's an issue. Definitely want to hear more.
Yeah. I probably really they would label me as hard right. And I know the issue was about abortion it was like a resolution in our city. And to me, they can't do anything for that. So why would you even bring that up except to be divisive? I mean, what can the city do? They can't do anything. What have they done since that resolution passed? All it did was divide the people. And I think it was just grandstanding. So I think she labels herself more conservative. But if that was me, I would have voted. I would have not voted either. I would have been like, this is stupid. Why are you bringing this to the city? Because we can't do anything.
I think for the mayor's race, and I don't know if you've gotten the sense of this, that the biggest issue is probably going to be development. Mm-hmm. That's the issue that's been popping for a while out here is, where do you stand on high density development within Riverton? Have you seen that as well as you're talking to people?
I think Riverton is done with high development. I mean, we've got that high density all behind us. We can't get out of our streets. The traffic is terrible. And I don't want a developer anymore. The developers have taken over the state. They run the business on the state level, and I don't want a developer for a mayor. I just don't. And that's Tony and Dan are developers.
Okay. Now, this issue of a 2 elected official household, they are not the only ones where there are 2 elected officials in the same household in Riverton.
Right.
The other similar couple are the Perucci's. Do you think? I guess tell me what you think about that. I was surprised that people were concerned about this if they're not concerned about the Perucci.
I think they are concerned about that. Perucci, Andy got appointed. He was not elected, and then no one ran against him because I think they made it feel like they couldn't win because Andy got appointed over the other people. And I'm sorry, but it's like having the Clintons and the Gores in Riverton. It's like I do not want this career politician type people. I mean, they make their money and they're living off the government. And so I just don't, it's just not right to be pushing the policies that are going to benefit you.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I just don't know. I feel like the 2 couples are actually a little bit different. Like the Perucci's actually, if you look at their past, they've never had non-political jobs. They've always, that's all they've ever done. And they're, from my own experience, and actually from Candace actually accused a gay guy of sexual harassment, falsely accused him of that. And I just think they are particularly not empathetic towards other people, and they will do nastier things because they actually have never had a real life, like a normal life. So it's very different. They're willing to do things that I think I haven't seen from the McKays. I just think they might be a little bit different on that way.
Yeah, and I hope somebody runs next time against Andy because I just think that is just wrong. I think it was wrong when the McKays did it, and I think it's wrong when Perucci's did it. So
interesting. Well, we'll see what happens. Well, you got to go. We got to contact them and see if we can get a debate set up.
I do want to ask Dan if he'll just go ahead and resign right now, and we'll see. We'll see before if she wins or loses. I mean, that would be the honesty of it.
Oh, God. I feel like there's somebody. Have you seen? There's a really funny meme about it, and he actually reposted it because I think he has a little bit of a sense of humor. So
he does have a little bit of a sense of humor.
Yeah, I can appreciate it. Because I remember the first time I interacted with him, I said something like, "Why aren't you guys we have this mask mandate? Why aren't you guys doing anything about it?" I'm so I'm like I said something, and he was like, "Well, do you think you could do a better job? Why don't you do the job then?" It was really funny. It made me laugh, and I was like, fair point. Well, right. Thanks for the Riverton update.
Yes.
We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Thanks, Tracy.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Riverton race is actually really interesting if you're out here. Like I said, it's an open race for the first time in a long time, and it'll be very interesting to see how this turns out. So, and I do think Dan's video and what he has offered definitely throws a wrench into people that are supporting, I think, Tisha's campaign, right? Because if a big concern of people is, oh, if you get elected to mayor, your husband's a senator, we think that's a conflict of interest. Well, he has just offered to solve the conflict. So now I think people might have to rethink, oh, look, that's interesting. I do think we need a debate, and I will reach out to the candidates and see if we can set one up, and that we want to talk about policy, because that's all that matters here. At the city level, you know, like to the point about the abortion, I don't know about what they passed on abortion, but there's real issues in Riverton that are driving people to want certain things. So for example, like I said, high density housing, huge issue out here. And so I want to know, where do you stand on high density housing? I want to know every single thing about your positions on issues that impact the city, which will be very different than the state level. And like I said, I think Riverton is actually a pretty important city in Utah. It tends to be the most Republican part of Salt Lake County, and it does not have, because Harriman is also pretty Republican, and Bluffdale is too, but the different, Harriman has a lot of high density housing in it. And so that one I think is probably going to become less Republican over time. We don't have that as much here. They've gotten a little bit ahead of it. So let me see here. I just got an email from Michael Clara. Oh. Okay, hold on. He says he can't get the link up on his phone. Okay, hold on. Let me just text him. Give me 1 second. We're going to have Michael Clara come on to talk about his the disclosure he got. Hey, Mr. Producer, is there a reason why the link wouldn't work? I sent it to him, and he said he tried to pull it up on his phone, and it wasn't working. Any thoughts? Let me try it. I'll try to text it to him. Okay, give me 1 second. I appreciate your patience as I try to figure out technical difficulties. 2, 1, 3, 4. Okay. All right, we should have him on in a couple minutes here. So basically, Michael Clara posted that, and I think he actually just posted his update, saying that he had been, that a whistleblower actually came to him and gave him a report from the Attorney General's office about their investigation of the signature gathering in 2024 with Governor Cox. I think John Curtis was one of them, maybe Derek Brown, all the candidates that were gathering signatures and specifically using the gathering, that he got a copy of that report. And so he's going to come and talk about that a little bit. There are some, I actually read through a lot of it. There are some interesting insights in the report that I thought were kind of, I don't know if they're groundbreaking, but definitely interesting. And I'd like to ask him what he thinks about them, because he has the deepest knowledge of the entire signature gathering scandal, I'll call it. What happened? Why, like, you know, and just as a quick background, basically, the bottom line is Governor Cox didn't have the requisite number of signatures to be put on the ballot, the primary ballot. So he goes to convention, he loses. I think it was something like 67-33 maybe, or 60. Mr. Producer, correct me if you know the number. It was I think it was the high 60s. Lyman got in the high 60s. Cox got in the low 30s. Cox needed at least 40% out of convention to go and be put on the GOP primary ballot. Or he could circumvent that process by collecting 28,000 signatures. He did not collect. Now, sorry, hold on. The Lieutenant Governor's office The Davis County clerk reviewed the signatures. They said he collected 28,000 signatures. Lieutenant Governor certified that and put him, and she put herself as well, onto that primary ballot. But then when they went and they started digging into it, it turned out they didn't actually have the requisite number of signatures. There was a lot of fraud involved in the signature gathering process. So that is a real problem, right? And so there's been an entire kind of process on trying to get the information into the public about what happened in that situation and why we are where we are today. So even though he didn't gather the requisite number of signatures, people have acted like it's no big deal that he was put onto that primary ballot, and he ended up winning that primary. But really, like, the entire thing is illegitimate. And it shows you that signature gathering, we actually need to end that whole process because it's so easily abused. Okay, let me see. Where is Michael Clara? Okay, I think he should be here soon. Okay, let me see. We got some comments here. We've got Kay Sanderson. He's talking about Dan McKay. I don't believe him for a minute. Remember, Dan McKay sponsored the bill to remove our flag, and Tani supports the new woke flag. You know, to be fair about that, I don't know where Tish stands on this flag situation. So, you know, and if we're gonna if we really want to be kind of fair about this, that could be one issue for sure. But we are talking about Riverton, so like we've got to also look at issues that are current in the city. Meaning, like I said, for me at least, the most important issue is going to be that high density housing issue. Meaning, I don't want any more of it. Like I don't want to hear about condos. I don't want to hear about apartments. I don't want to hear about townhouses. I want single family homes. That's it. That's it. Nothing else. And I guess they do commercial development. We have a couple of big malls that opened, or actually maybe one new mall has tons of entertainment stuff in it. So they'll keep developing there. I don't care about that. The Melanie Yates says, I agree 1000% with you, Tracy. So she must have agreed with something Tracy said. Okay. Well, while we wait for him, I'll talk about one of the other issues. There was one thing I thought was kind of interesting, and we'll talk about this first until Michael Clara shows up. But I've got in the report, it says that Governor Cox paid $10.50 per signature. That was the contract he had with the Gather. And then there was a smaller race. It was a race for like 2,000. The guy had to collect 2,000 signatures, and for that one, he had to pay $12 a signature. And then that's not what the signature gatherers actually make. They make, I think it was like the top amount they're making, maybe it was $3.50, and then it goes down for each time the signature is on a different petition. So I think what happens is that typically when the signature gatherers go out, they might, and let's say the signature gathering company has contracts with 5 candidates. They will probably send out the gatherers with a packet from each of those candidates to a specific houses, right? And so when the gatherer comes to your house, they're going to ask you to sign each of those signatures. The company is collecting $12 for signature for each of those, or $10.50, whatever the dollar amount is, even though you're just standing in one spot. And then, so if you get 5 signatures, and let's just say that they're $12 a signature, you have collected $60 from one house. If you get 2 signatures at the house, you've collected $120 from just one household. So you just keep going and doing that. It's more efficient too. The signature gatherers don't make that much money per signature they gather. It trickles down. I think the highest amount they're getting is $3.50. And then if the signature shows up on the second petition, like I was saying, the dollar amount for that second one is lower, third one is lower, and it keeps going down. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, with the paid per signature, I think that's an issue that really needs to be changed. So I did actually a weekly rundown story on this. I'll play this for you. Here we go. Ready?
Is paying signature gatherers per signature increasing fraud? In June, we learned that signature gatherers who work for a company called The Gathering were under investigation by the Washington County Attorney due to irregularities. Last week, the Legislative Auditor General released an audit report of its review of signature petitions submitted by Governor Cox, Derek Brown, and John Curtis. As background, the Lieutenant Governor had the Davis County Clerk review signature petitions submitted by Governor Cox, Derek Brown, and John Curtis. It turns out the Davis County Clerk flagged multiple packets because they had a disproportionate number of rejected signatures, which raised concerns about the signature gatherer. These packets were sent to the Lieutenant Governor's office for additional review and, if appropriate, submission to the Attorney General's office. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office would not confirm or deny if they have an open investigation. In addition, last year, 13...
Oh, is that interesting? So this was in October of last year. They wouldn't confirm or deny the
investigation. In addition,
I didn't get to finish
a
listening.
spokesperson for the Attorney General's office would not confirm or deny if they have an open investigation. In addition, last year, 13 people were indicted for crimes related to signature gathering petitions in the CD2 race, including fraud, forgery, and even falsifying a lease agreement. In Utah, candidates pay signature gatherers per signature gathered. Some have suggested that there is less incentive for fraud when signature gatherers are paid by the hour instead of by signature. Should Utah mandate that signature gatherers must be paid by the hour?
Okay. So that's kind of a setup to what we're talking about here, right? We do need to make changes to how our system works. I am a little bit confused here because Michael Clara said he's on hold, but I don't know where he's on hold to. Oh, hold on. Oh, okay. Okay, we got him. You can put him through, Mr. Producer. Let's see. I feel like we're a little bit... Anyway, so that's kind of interesting, right? And in Michigan, they're actually working to change the law so that you can no longer pay signature gatherers per signature, because this isn't even just a Utah problem. This happens everywhere. And you'd have to move to paying them by the hour. Okay, do we have...
Are you there,
Michael?
Goud?
I am here.
Yes, we do. I just pushed the wrong button, that's all.
Okay, great.
Go ahead. Michael, can you hear us?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Michael's on. I can hear you.
Go ahead.
All right. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was trying to get home, and I didn't make it, so I was trying to do it on my phone video, but that's not working.
Okay, it's fine. We can hear you, so it's all good. Tell us about what was... Go ahead. I was just going to say, tell us about what was disclosed to you by the whistleblower.
Well, I got a copy of the offense report from the Attorney General's office, AG 24170, that when I did a grammar request on it last year, they told me it doesn't exist, so they couldn't fulfill my grammar request.
Oh, interesting. So they said it wasn't there versus we have a reason that we're not going to disclose it, like we have a privilege or there's a statutory reason we don't have to disclose?
Correct. Like when I did a grammar request for Senator Ibsen's signature list in May of last year, they said, we have it, but we can't let you see it because of a criminal investigation and under GRAMA, it's a protected record. And that's an appropriate response. I appealed it and lost the appeal, but that's normal that, like if I do a grammar request for a police report, I might get the cover sheet and they'll just say, but we're not giving you the offense report until the investigation's done.
Okay. I guess talk about the significance of the report itself. Look.
Well, initially I wanted it last year in July when I found out there was an investigation. And the way I found out is that some people contacted me from Vineyard, Utah and said, hey, we saw your post on X about Governor Cox's signature list. And we actually had an investigator come to our house and look into it. I said, really? So I went down there and met him. I got a picture of the business card with the case number on it, and then I submitted a grammar request for the case number. My intention was that I would get a reply back saying, we're not giving it to you. There's an investigation going on. And I would have just given that letter to Nancy Clausen and said, hey, you might want to let your attorneys know, because, you know, they had a case going on right then and there that they had filed at the beginning of July for Governor Cox's signature package. So that's all I intended to do.
Okay, got it. So are there any kind of highlights from the report that you could talk about today?
Yeah, and so I just published about an hour ago. I know you haven't seen it because I think I published it while you were on air. I published, I think, like a 30 or 40-minute video kind of talking about it. It's my update number 15 on my X page, or, you know, on my YouTube. And basically the interesting part is that I think what was going on is that the Attorney General's office denied that it existed because they didn't want that to come up while Lyman was in court trying to get the signature packets of Governor Cox. Because looking at the law, it's my understanding that if Lyman had any evidence that there's something wrong with the signature package, he had till August 8th to file to challenge Cox being on the ballot. And so I think that the Attorney General's office was just trying to run out the clock by denying that it existed. And if I found out that it existed after that, they didn't care.
Wow. Okay, well, that if that is true, that's actually a pretty big scandal, because that suggests that the Attorney General was involved in covering up the signature issues.
Oh, absolutely, because then now that I got the report from this whistleblower, it says in there that it was actually the lieutenant governor that, let me say it this way, the county clerk actually sends packets to the lieutenant governor, and they actually verified over 2,000 signatures of packets that they were given. And that goes against everything that we've been told in the court that they represented to the court. You can go back and see, and I put it in my video, you have Callie, the elections director, and Brian McKenzie, the county clerk, adamant to the legislators that the lieutenant governor never verified any signatures. All that was done with the county clerk. And according to this report, that's a lie.
Wow. I saw that in the report. So just tell me if this is correct, but it sounds like the Davis County clerk was reviewing signature packets, identified that there were packets that had fraudulent signatures, and then turned those over to the lieutenant governor's office, and at that point is when the lieutenant governor reviewed them. Does that sound correct?
Well, they didn't verify them. What happened was they identified a particular signature gatherer that they could see. You know, they could just look at the packet and see that all the signatures were written by the same person. So they just started pulling all of those packets out that belonged to this signature gatherer. And even though he had submitted signatures for Governor Cox, they just removed his name as a signature gatherer, and they just sent all those to the lieutenant governor. The problem with that is, number one, that's not the process by law. The process is that every packet that you get, you record it, and you put in the signatures into the Vista system. And what they should have done is just said, yeah, these are not matching, and recorded it. But instead, what they did is they pulled them all and they sent them back essentially to the candidate. Not back, but just sent them to the candidate. And then the candidate, who's a lieutenant governor, is the one that verified all the signatures. And then they actually harvest some of those and use them to count towards Cox, which to me is illegal.
Oh, is that when I was reading through this, there were 84 signatures that came out of that review. Are you talking about those 84 signatures were then used to put into Cox's total?
Yeah, so 84, like about, I think 40 something of those were actually valid signatures for Cox. And
Okay.
so then it's kind of hard to explain, but they monkey around with that and they use those in the audit. Like they'll for example, Google and one of the LG people actually goes to the Attorney General's office when he's doing his audit, and they look at the packets and they glean, or harvest the good signatures and use them. So when he says that there were, so many spare signatures, he uses these signatures that were verified by the governor in his count, which again to me is illegal because the county clerk should have verified those one way or the other, not the lieutenant governor.
Oh, because in this case, all of the signature verification for that race was being done by the Davis County clerk. Is that right?
Right. And they would tell people, in various settings that in order to avoid any conflict of interest, the county clerk did all the verification. But in this case, that's a lie. It was the lieutenant governor office who did the verification on these signatures.
Oh, interesting. Has anybody seen the?
That's just what we're aware of. We don't know what else they were doing.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Do you have any guesses about any other activities they've been engaged in?
Yeah, I mean, I can see some of the, I can't, it'd be difficult for me to prove it, but it looks like some packets were like packets that ended up on Governor Cox's signature list. For example, the people that were prosecuted for forged signatures, there were 4 of them prosecuted for forged signatures with Senator Ibsen. Those same people turned in signatures for Governor Cox, but they were never prosecuted for signatures that they turned in for Governor Cox. And then part 2 of this story is that they actually did a third audit without telling us. They had started in mid-September. They do another audit, a secret audit, if you will, and it's done in December. And that's the one that they did with 2 CPA firms and had like 14 CPAs look at every single signature. Not statistically, but look at all of it. And they determined that Governor Cox had over 1,000 forged signatures in his signature packets. And these are signatures that the county clerk did verify as being valid signatures. But now these CPAs are saying, well, he has over 1,000 that are invalid. And what I think happened was that in the summer and fall of last year, when Lyman and Clausen are in court trying to get a look at these signature packets, these guys realize there's a chance that the judge will rule in favor of Lyman and let him see the packets. And if Lyman sees the packets, he doesn't even need to compare the signatures to what we have in Vista. He can just look at the packets and see that there's forged signatures in them. So I think what they said is, what we'll do is we'll do this audit. And if in December the judge rules in Lyman's favor, we'll just disclose this audit that we did and say, hey, we already knew that there were forged signatures in there. Here's the audit. But what happened was on December 17th, the judge ruled against Lyman and dismissed his case. So Lyman cannot see the packets, and they bury this audit number 3. They don't tell anybody about it.
How did you learn about audit number 3?
Good question. I was hoping you would ask, because in June of this year, Winterton, who is the co-chair of the government ops committee, and I forget who the co-chair is on the House side. I think it's Burton. They asked Tina Cannon, the current auditor, to come give a report on audit number 3, because there was whisperings about this audit number 3, and so they asked her to come to the committee and disclose it, and she did. But she doesn't give us any candidate names or anything, but she discloses this audit that was done from September to December, but was never disclosed to the public. But in June of this year, it was disclosed.
Okay, got it. Now, can you just, so the 1,000 fraudulent signatures that were in audit number 3, are those a part of the total number that were reported as verified for Governor Cox?
Yes, and the problem is that it looks like maybe, so there's certain candidates that had to do 28,000.
Yep.
And probably Brown and Curtis had over 1,000, same thing, that were fraudulent. However, they both had over 1,000 spare signatures. And because of the company that they use, I think it's called In the Field, they seem very reliable. From what I could see from my research, that company, was very reliable. And so I kind of believe that they actually do have spare signatures, that if somebody were to go verify them, and that third audit did go do that, but they don't tell us what the results were. I think that Brown and Curtis probably had enough to backfill, from the ones they turned in. Cox absolutely did not, because they had to fake all of his spare signatures. They had to cobble them together and pretend that they were there, and they're not. They're not there.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I guess if you take into account that 1,000 that were that the audit number 3 says are fraudulent, what number does Cox end up at for actual, I guess, somewhat verified signatures? I guess we wouldn't know for sure because we haven't seen the packets.
Right, well, we haven't seen the packet, but when I did grammar requests trying to chase down, according to the Lieutenant Governor's office, I've submitted over 30 grammar requests over the last 9 months just on Governor Cox alone. And so and they say that in one of the filings for because I have a grammar appeal hearing on Friday, and they say that like that's a bad thing, but what they don't realize is that I was doing it to try to triangulate them. I was giving them grammar requests, and only, maybe 10 of them were really important, but I was using the other ones as smoke screens, so they didn't know what I was looking for. But they end up, getting caught in their own lies. And so the spare signatures, as far as I can tell, he probably had like maybe less than 200 that are valid, that are spare signatures. And then the other ones, that like they went and harvested from this one person that they prosecuted for fake signatures. They had to go harvest signatures and apply them to Governor Cox.
Wow. But so in the end of it, he's way under that 28,000 threshold that he needed to qualify for the Republican primary ballot.
Right. So another way to say this, and I don't think I said this in my video, I should have, but another way to say this, or to make this make sense, and then people could poke holes in my theory here and question it, but at least it's a framework to try to understand it, is that back in June, when Lyman does the grammar request and he says, I'm questioning the results of these, the results of his verification, I want to see the packets. So had the Lieutenant Governor allowed him to just view the packets, he would have seen the fake signatures and forged signatures and would have questioned it, and then had, that was in June, the end of June, even though the primary had happened. And then had they had these CPAs come in and look at all the signatures, they would have said, no, he's short over 1,000, and he doesn't have enough spares to backfill. Now, I don't know what that would have caused. If that would have been an issue, if they would have taken him off the ballot, but at least Lyman would have had he would have met the deadline of August 8th and would have challenged it. And what the outcome is, I don't know, but that's what they were trying to hide this whole time.
That's crazy. Just to go back to an issue you brought up on the prosecution piece of this, that they did not prosecute signature gatherers for fraudulent signatures with regard to Governor Cox's petitions. Talk about why you think that is.
Well, that's a good question too. So I like your questions because it tells me you understand this issue. And, it's just so hard. I feel bad sometimes that I wonder if people get it, but thanks for asking that. So on Senator Ibsen, he doesn't make the threshold. Yep. And I think that he finds out too late, but he still ends up making it through convention and everything. And he's still the current senator, if I remember right. But they reject, and this is the Washington County clerk says, no, these are forged signatures. We're rejecting them, and it's going to affect the candidate, but that's not our concern. Yep. And then the candidate, they decide they're not going to put in. When you do that to Cox, they did not reject the forged signatures of these same people on Governor Cox's list. So they did reject some because I can see that on the list. But my theory is you cannot, if they prosecuted those 4 people for Governor Cox's list, their defense attorney would have said, you're not going to prosecute my client when you use my client's 4 signatures to get your governor over the threshold. Oh. And that's why I think they did not get prosecuted for the 4 signatures they submitted for Governor Cox, because the Davis County clerk used those 4 signatures to get Governor Cox over the threshold.
Yeah, this is okay. Wow. Mr. Producer wants you to know that this is real journalism and what you're doing is really important. He's right. This is crazy.
Well,
talk about the hearing.
Journalist is going to have to take it from here because I just researched it and revealed it.
Yeah. We'll talk about the hearing on Friday and how this disclosure could impact what your grandma appeal.
So the grandma appeal on Friday is to view the packets. It's kind of like the Lyman one, but I just want to view the packets of the spare signatures, which they're not going to produce. And so in this case, for me, the process is more important than the outcome. Because at this point, what's going to happen is the hearing officer was appointed by the governor, who's Lonnie Pearson, and I hope he's not listening to your show, because he was appointed by the governor. Prior to that, he was the records officer for the Attorney General's office. He's the one that told me there are no records, that this investigation does not exist. And so on Friday, I want to be able to say, remember when you told me last July that the records don't exist? They actually do. And now you got the Attorney General sitting right here, or one of the deputies, saying that they can't give me some of the records because there's an investigation going on. But you told me there wasn't an investigation. And guess what? In the meantime, in the last couple of weeks, I found out there was an investigation, and it's done. So there's no reason to, not give me some of these records that you're saying don't exist. They do, the signature packets for the spare signatures.
Wow. Okay, so that could be actually a really interesting hearing for people to go and watch, right? Is it in person or is it over Zoom?
Oh yeah, It's in person, and you can watch it online. And Natalie Clausen and Phil Lyman, I've asked them to be witnesses, and they've agreed. And the hearing officer last month agreed that they could come in as witnesses. So, it'll be something to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if the hearing officer cancels it if he finds out that a whistleblower gave me this report, because he's going to look pretty dumb.
Yeah, and potentially also unethical, right? Like,
well, yeah, they're definitely, when you get a chance and you watch the video I put, I definitely can demonstrate that at the very least, they have no, their moral compass is definitely distorted.
yeah. In the report itself, there were the CEO of the signature gathering company talked about, there was an interview with one of the investigators and the CEO of the signature gathering company. In that, the CEO said they don't do signature verification before they turn the packets in, but they do look at them to see if there's anything obvious that would indicate fraud. And I guess I'm kind of wondering here,
right,
what happened in this case, because we haven't seen the packets, but from what you're talking about, it sounds like it would be obvious that there was fraud on these packets, and his company didn't catch that. I guess, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good point. See, the thing is that there's actually, you can see fraud in both sets of packets, in the spares and in the actual packets that were counted as valid, because audit number 3 tells us that. They even have a number on there about, it's in the slides that Tina Cannon showed, and I forget the number, but they all actually say, we didn't even have to look at the business system. We could tell that these were forged signatures. And going back to the indictments of the people that were indicted, they explain what they did. Well, some of them do. Some of them said, like this particular one, of the report you're looking at, I don't think there was very few people that he contacted. I think in the beginning, he actually contacted people. And I'm talking about the beginning, like maybe, 4 or 5 packets. And then after that, he just submitted all the forgeries. So those would be obvious. There were some people that did Senator Ipsen, and they did go door to door, and then they would have like other people, like a teenager, say, well, you can sign for your parents and that kind of stuff. And so they explain, like one of the guys for Senator Ipsen says that he thinks he did, and this is in his indictment, he says, I think like 40% of my signatures are forged. and so that means that, 40% of his signatures that he turned in for Governor Cox are forged, but, those actually were counted as valid.
Yeah. Okay. I remember reading, I think in Washington County, it seemed like it was a little bit different, that it was these college kids who were going house to house and telling people you can sign for both yourself and your spouse. Was it different though there was a one signature gatherer up here who seemed like he was a big focus, and he collected signatures both in Salt Lake and Utah counties. I saw that in there, and his seemed to be actual full-on fraudulent packets, and so that seems like a little bit of a distinct situation.
Right.
Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. That particular case number is just for, like, all those 48 packets come from one signature gatherer, and that's the one they pulled, completely out. Which again, that's not the process. And the other, for me, the bigger issue was, and I emphasize this in my update, is the fact that when on July 17th, when the Attorney General files what do they call it, a opposition to the TRO, he lists in there, he basically says, look, Lyman and Clausen don't know what they're talking about. This process he calls it a rigorous statutory process that the signatures went through. And he goes through and he explains to the judge in writing everything that it went through, and all those are lies. And he says, well, the Governor Cox had close to 600 spare signatures that were not even verified or touched by election workers. That's a lie, because according to that report, so I don't know, it doesn't show you this in the report, but I calculated it, 47% of Governor Cox's spare signatures are in that report. And they were verified. By the time on July 17th, when the Attorney General files that motion against the TRO and says that 600 of these spare signatures were not even looked at, that's a lie. 47% of them had been verified by that point. And out of that 47%, only 15% of those were valid. And I think that would have been important information to let Judge Nelson know. I think if he would have told Judge Nelson the truth and said, well, Governor Cox has 600 spare signatures, and we've actually validated 47% of them, but only 15% of those are valid, I think the judge would have said, okay, I think there is a problem here. Maybe we do need to look at the signature package.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Another piece I saw in the report that I thought was kind of interesting was that the investigator went and interviewed various victims of the fraud. And a common theme I saw in the responses was, number one, it wasn't their signature, but there were multiple witnesses who had never signed a petition before, which struck me as kind of interesting. It struck me as maybe these are people who actually are opposed to signature gathering and so would not have signed the petitions anyway. And I'm wondering now if that's something that maybe people need to make grandma requests to see if their names are on those signature packets, or figure that out, right? Like, I'm wondering, is my name on the signature packet? Who else's name could be on there?
Right. Well, the good thing is, in my update, I kind of give praise to the legislature, because in comparison to anybody else or any branch of government, they're the ones that have been more aggressive in addressing this. And so we have passed laws now that when signature gathering happens at the next gubernatorial, number one, you can look up your name to see if it's on there. The candidate is going to be able to see all the signature packets. You are going to be able to have poll watchers now. So a lot of the ways they cheat it, they're not going to be able to do this the next go around. They're going to have to figure out some other ways to cheat during the verification process.
Okay. Oh, that's really good. So it sounds like the legislature has actually been responsive to at least the issues that have been exposed through what I would call this scandal.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. To their credit, they absolutely have. I think the accountability though comes in that the criminal justice system needs to come in and to play, and you need to go, because right now you still have Callie, who's the state elections director, and McKenzie, who's the Davis County clerk. We shouldn't let them get away with their illegal activity and what they've done here in terms of lying, in terms of being deceitful. And I'm not even talking about the Attorney General's office, that definitely, that's why I call it, my subtitle to that update was the plot against the gubernatorial candidate, Phil Lyman. There definitely was a plot. This had to be organized and planned and coordinated in order for it to work, and they did that, including State Auditor Don Dougal, who now works for the new Attorney General.
Yeah, that's a really great point though, because I think McKenzie is the Davis County clerk, right? So he'll be up for re-election in next year.
Correct.
Okay, so in that case, voters could hold him accountable. With Cowley, he's in an appointed. I don't think it's an appointed position. I think he's just like a career employee. I do wonder how people can put pressure to get him terminated from that position. Because if there was dishonesty involved, then I definitely don't think someone like that should be in charge of. He's the elections director for the whole state. Have you heard any kind of scuttlebutt of what's going to happen with him?
Well, no, because I think, part of the thing that I point out in my update that we actually have a culture of corruption here in Utah. We've normalized it, kind of like when the state central committee last month, they're okay with not supporting a federal lawsuit against the lieutenant governor. And I'm talking about the leadership. You got the Chairman Axon, the vice chair, and on down, everybody except I think Bonham in the Utah GOP leadership was okay with removing that part of the resolution. They did not want to support that part of the lawsuit that required the lieutenant governor about the voting rolls. But by the way, that's the position, as you know, it's your case, that's a position that the attorney general is taking too, that, the case should be dismissed because Lyman doesn't have any standing. And so, my point is that when you have the leadership of the GOP looking the other way about corruption and election and not supporting election integrity, then we shouldn't be surprised that we don't prosecute people, elected officials or appointed officials that break the law.
Yeah, that's a great point. Do you have any other thoughts for the audience? Things they should be maybe thinking about or concerned about?
Well, I just want to commend, Phil Lyman supporters, if you want to call them that, or even beyond that. I don't consider myself a Phil Lyman supporter. I'm friends with him in Natalie. I never discuss politics with them, but I would not have put in the time that I put into this were it not for people that cared. Because on the one hand, I can say, you know what, I know that's wrong. I know it's illegal, but if the authorities aren't going to follow through with it, it's not my place. It's not my role to waste my time trying to expose it. But I did expose it, and I did put in the time to do it, I guess to honor the passion and the concern that a lot of my fellow citizens have, and a lot of those just happen to be Lyman supporters. So I want to commend them, for their passion to want to see things through. And then, that's what causes me to bring skill set to see how I can contribute to this in a positive way.
Yeah, that's actually, so Mr. Producer actually wanted me to ask you this, but when you started down this path, were you, I don't think that you thought you were going to find what you have found, right? I assume that when you started this, you just thought, I'll just do a quick grammar request. Let's see what happens. And everything will probably be fine. And this has turned into something totally different. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah. Even when I think I just did a podcast with Brent, I can't think of his last name right now, and I explained this, but when Natalie called me, Natalie Clausen found out that I had done a grammar request down south, and that it was the same company. I remember her telling me all these things that they thought might be wrong with the signature verification process, and I was driving back from Idaho, talking to her, and I'm just looking at the phone thinking, she's off her rocker. But she's a nice lady. Anybody who knows Natalie Clausen knows that she's a nice lady in person, and she's very nice on the phone. And I said, well, I'm not going to be rude to her, and I'm going to help her with a couple grammar requests. And, but I don't want any part of this. This is crazy. Yeah. There's no way that the governor and lieutenant governor are rigging an election. That's just ridiculous. And, by July, I had to say, oh, no, there is something here.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. Well, where can people find you, Michael, for updates and to go and see the video too?
I think Yeah, I think X is the best place. I don't know what my name. We'll just look up Michael Clara. CLARA is the last name, and it's at Don Miguel address. And my latest, the latest update is up there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Right,
I'm going to share it with everybody so they can see your X information. Thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to go, thanks. Yeah, if you want to check out his video, you can go here. It's at Don Miguel SLC. I know I'm going to check out this video. I think it'll be very good. So I'm going to give that check it out. Let me see here. Let me turn this off. Okay. So let's see what else we got. What else I had to talk about today? I do see that I've got some comments. Let's see. Disagree. Butter says that way an investigation would happen and allow them to hide the lack of signatures. And I think that's referring to what we were just talking about. Then we've got Pixelated SLUT. Oh, this person looks like they're going a little crazy. I think he misspelled my name. He said Goud and his ilk are trying to steal your personal information and sell it to the highest bidder. Goud cannot explain why he wants your personal information. None of them can. These people are trying to violate your constitutional rights. I don't want any part of your corrupt power grab. This is all from the same person. Tell us why you want my name, address, email, phone number, and social security number. Blah, blah, blah. Why do you want my information? All caps. Okay. So he's talking about, I represent Phil Lyman in a federal lawsuit that's been filed under the National Voter Registration Act. And Phil is seeking the Utah's voter registration rolls, including, so if you're all the public, we have 3 categories of voter data. I'll just do a quick explanation on this. We have public voter records. Then we have private voter records. Anybody can request that their record be private. You just check a box on your voter registration form and it will be made private. The only people that have access to private voter data are the parties, declared candidates, and then government officials. Then there's a third category called withheld. Withheld is for military members, the people with protective orders, law enforcement. And then there's a little twist. I think it was May 12th of 2020. The legislature converted everybody that was private into withheld. The withheld category, the only people that can access that are government officials. So currently, well, let me go back. In 2021, I was part of an election integrity committee. We requested a copy of the voter registration records for Salt Lake County, and they withheld about 34% of those records because they were private or withheld. So we were only able to get about 66% of the voter records. My understanding is now that we would get even less if we requested it. So that's kind of like a problem, right? Because under the National Voter Registration Act, well, under state law, Pixelated, under state law, that's how it works. Congress, a while ago, passed a law because they knew that there were shenanigans happening at the state level. And that law is called the National Voter Registration Act. That law allows citizens to get a copy of the voter registration rolls, and it actually preempts state privacy protections. So what Phil is actually seeking, like I said, I'm his lawyer, is a copy of the state's voter registration records, the voter rolls, including the public voter rolls, which anybody can get anyway, the private voter rolls, and the impermissibly withheld voter rolls. So meaning he's not seeking people who are legitimately in that category because they're military, law enforcement, protective order. He's seeking the people that were converted impermissibly from private into withheld on May 12th of 20. When you get, that's a right you have under federal law. There's what the left tries to do is all this BS about, oh, we're going to go sell the data. Why would we sell it? We don't need to sell it. The entire point of wanting to get a copy of the voter rolls for Utah is to be able to verify that they are being properly maintained. You just heard an interview with Michael Clara talking about literal fraud out of our lieutenant governor's office. Literal fraud. Do you really think that a lieutenant governor, her director of elections, and everybody else that has been involved in fraudulent signature counting to get people onto a primary ballot are somehow properly maintaining your voter rolls? Like, are we that stupid that we think people that committed fraud in one aspect of elections, and they thought, I mean, this was, if you really listen to that interview and you understand what happened with the signature gathering, that is a very intricate conspiracy that just happened with multiple elected officials involved and their staffs. This happened last year. They have known, according to that report, they have known since April of 2024. That's when the Attorney General started their investigation, that there were fraudulent packets, entire packets of fraudulent signatures that were submitted on behalf of Governor Cox. We are now at October 2025, and somebody just, a whistleblower, a good person, finally just disclosed the report. Are we, like, really? You think that the Attorney General was involved, the auditor, the former auditor was involved? I mean, that guy went off the rails. He did some good stuff, but then I think once he got into the whole, like, he wanted men and women's bathrooms, clearly he just fell apart. And the lieutenant governor is a disaster. She's totally corrupt. You really think all those people coordinating, and then, Davis County clerk, that somehow they're not committing fraud in other aspects of elections? Of course they are. Of course they are. And my guess, this is a theory, is that once you get into the private and withheld voter records, you're actually, and probably more with the withheld, you're going to see that there are lots of non-citizens on the rolls and that the voter records are actually not being properly maintained. So we have a federal right to get the data. Everybody, and actually everybody does. It's not, Phil isn't the only one who has the right. He's just the guy that was willing to pay for it. Everybody has a right to get this data, and we should be exercising that right, because our job is to hold these elected officials accountable, and they've already proven to you that they will violate the law and commit fraud if it benefits them. So, a pixelated SLUT wants you to know a theory is also called a conspiracy. I'll just be honest with you. I'm about 100 on conspiracies coming true at this point. So I'm just going to stick with what I know. And like I said it's a theory. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess that I'm probably right. So, and you're welcome to go and look at any other alleged conspiracy theory that I've put forward. They've all come true. You know, for example, think about the COVID vaccination. Talk about a total fraud. Like, how many of you took it thinking it was going to be good for you? That was a bunch. I knew from the beginning that was poison. So, you know, you take it for what you think it's worth. But like I said, let's see the data. And then I'm thinking it's not going to look so good. The reason why they're fighting having to turn over the voter records and it's all this BS. Like, Mr. Producer says, used to be 2 years between conspiracy theory and truth. It's down to about 2 months. Seriously. Yeah. So he says, those were your, now Pixelated says, if what you're saying is true, when was anybody held accountable? I don't know what you're referring to now. Now he also says, that's why we have clerks. Okay, but a clerk was involved in the fraud with the signature gathering. Like, again, multiple elected officials involved. You know what's amazing about this, if you really want to get down, see, like, they centralized, this is a problem actually with centralization in general, right? Is that if this had been done by the county clerks, so we have 29 county clerks, you wouldn't have been able to get the fraud like what just happened. No way, because it's dissipated, meaning that you don't have a central location where they can commit fraud. This is also the problem, by the way, with having mail ballots in general, is because you centralize all the counting in one office instead of in your precincts like you used to do. All of those old systems that were kind of, distributing out and making it so more people are involved, all of it was meant to reduce fraud. We've actually gone more and more towards centralization which increases the risk of what just happened. In this case, by taking all of those packets for statewide candidates and putting them into one clerk's office like they did, they made it possible to commit the fraud. I mean, that's the whole thing. Under a system where if you just had this being done at the individual county clerks, you wouldn't be able to get that kind of a unity with them. They're all, I mean, like, you have a Democrat in Salt Lake County. I don't know if she would have gone along with that. Maybe she would have. Maybe I kind of feel like maybe she wouldn't have. I don't think the Utah County clerk would go along with it. He's pretty independent. I don't even know what most of the other clerks. I doubt they would too. They'd all be probably doing their own thing, and who knows what would have happened at that point. This person says, now, you're saying that increasing access to elections is a corrupt endeavor. I don't even know what you're saying. It doesn't make sense. I'm saying transparency is the key to having better, cleaner elections. We don't have to, I mean, this is a great example of that. We had no transparency, and look what happened. We had massive fraud. Okay. Anyway, I hope that was helpful to all of you guys. I'm just trying to see if I had anything else. That was a good interview. My mind's a little bit blown by that, to be honest with you. Okay, let's close on a quick little thing I want to show you guys. I have 2 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I have two minutes. Here's what I'm going to say to all you guys. We need to amend HB 257. This is the bill that restricted men from women's bathrooms and locker rooms, and vice versa. It should be both ways. We don't want women in men's locker rooms or bathrooms either. And so we need to amend that bill in this coming up legislative session, and we need to do a categorical ban on men in women's locker rooms and vice versa. And it needs to apply to both government and private facilities. I want you guys to pay attention to this. This is a 90-10 issue, by the way. It's like a winner beyond all winners. So I have no idea why I struggle to get Republican legislators to do this. Only in Utah. Here's Candace Prucci. She's going to run for Congress. She wants to be a congresswoman really badly. And I think you should demand that she fixes this bill next year if she wants to be your congresswoman. So let's listen to her talk about how she's okay with men using women's bathrooms and locker rooms.
There's no penalty here if, say, a trans woman goes into whatever restroom they'd like. If they go into the bathroom.
A trans woman is a man.
Go to the bathroom, come out. There's no penalty here. It's if there is a behavior that then happens, right? That if there is, you can walk through it, lewd behavior, assault.
So you should let the man into the women's locker room. The only problem is when he assaults you and rapes you. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Totally makes sense.
It walks through those things. So I view the third step as still focusing on behavior. I know that there were some definitions added that helped tighten the language again, but there are other pieces that were pulled out for rape centers and family domestic violence shelters because they didn't want to compromise federal funding and they wanted to keep working on that piece of the bill. So
all of that can be changed now because we have Trump as Trump administration. There should be no exceptions at all. None. Zero. We need nothing. Okay.
I think their sponsor showed that she really was willing to sit down at the table, and
that's the problem. She sat, Kira Birkeland sat down with Equality Utah and Troy Williams to come up with that crap bill.
Been working on this for over a year, but this is something that I know I've heard from my district that they have wanted guidance on in the K through 12 space on how to create a privacy plan and how to address these issues. And I actually do think you have to have a compassionate approach for both.
Okay. I'll just finish by saying this. Candace Prucci says that on liberal TV, and then when she goes to her constituents, she lies to them and says that men are banned from women's bathrooms and locker rooms. Okay, that we need to change that this coming up session. So contact your legislators, see if you can find one who's willing to sponsor it. I think Candace should do it because she's the one that pushed this bunk compromise, but I'm guessing she won't because I don't think her donors will allow her to. So on that note, thank you for listening to the Goud Crowd. Thank you as well, Pixelated. I appreciate you listening. And we will see you next week. We're on every Monday from 5 to 7. And you can listen to us on my X handle and on I think it's Mainstream Media Utah X handle, YouTube, Rumble, and at kmmu.org. I will see you next week.